How do you replace the best pass rushing end in college football? And oh yeah, the other guy on the other side who is pretty darn good as well. We talk Michigan football. We got Justin Rowe here. You got to catch him on his podcast, Blue by 90 podcast. Just look it up on your favorite audio platform. And Justin does a fabulous job bringing on players and great Michigan football. And I'm sure basketball talk there as well. Justin, how you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. Yeah, we do have a little bit of basketball talk right now as Michigan had a good win at Indiana. But there's always Michigan football talk to be had. There are 4 seasons here in Michigan. There is spring, summer, fall, and then Harbaugh to the NFL.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. But we're going to have mercy on everyone and ourselves as well, and not talk about Jim making a move. We're talked out about it.
We are talked
about it last year.
Oh my God, it feels like it's just on and on. So I'm very okay with not talking about it. We can talk about these guys that outside of the coaches, the players did a lot of good things too, and how we're going to replace them next year as well.
You know, Justin, as soon as we say this, we're going to record this, and 10 minutes later, something's going to happen, and I'm going to be hitting you up and saying, Justin, I need you to come back on here. We got to talk about this.
Exactly. Okay. That's usually how it goes.
Let's go to the defensive front because 2 monsters have to be replaced. Aidan Hutchinson, of course, Heisman finalist, David Ojabo as well. You mentioned Chris Hinton in the middle. So the defensive line gets restructured for 2022, who at this point, with a lot of football and workouts left to be played, of course, to determine who the top candidates are, who at this point looks like they might step in.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, I think, the toughest. I mean, it's no secret there that Aidan Hutchinson and David Ojabo are tough to replace. But I think for Michigan, though, that's the toughest position to replace, the defensive line in general. But definitely on the edge too. The reason more so is not because they have a lack of talent that are up and coming, but just nobody's had experience. Aidan Hutchinson was there for 4 years. David Ojabo has been there for 3. So, you just don't have guys that have a ton of experience at that position now. So, but when you look at it, you've got some guys that are coming up. I'll be honest, some of these guys, I don't for sure know if they're coming back or not. They've got seniors and graduate seniors and stuff like that, but I believe they still have eligibility, but haven't announced either way yet if they're coming back. So you look at a guy like Taylor Upshaw or Jeff Spate or Julius Welshoff, who have all contributed. They've played behind Hutchinson and Ojabo, and they've definitely got a decent amount of playing time. They could possibly come back and help their, those are guys that are good. They just weren't number 1 pick good. So you're not going to get much play, obviously, when you have those studs up there in Ojabo and Hutchinson. But those guys, and then you pair those two with a couple younger guys like a Jalen Harrell possibly, who's a sophomore who made some great plays for Michigan when he did get in this year. Braden McGregor as well is a guy who looks very similar to Hutchinson, just a little bit smaller, and he's an up-and-coming guy too. Mike Morris also played really well as a DN too. I think Mike Morris is going to have a breakout year coming up for Michigan. So those are the names I'd look at there. I would look at how is Mike McDonald going to handle that group and this defense in general when you're not going to get Aidan Hutchinson in the backfield on every play. You might have to, make some compromises in some other position groups because you can't rely on this position group being so dominant all the time.
And just to clarify this, what Justin's alluding to is it used to be nice and clear cut before our COVID pandemic year of 2020 in regards to just that one deadline waiting for anyone who was draft eligible as an underclassman to declare for the NFL draft. So that is passed on January 15th, but we've got a second date where basically anyone who is eligible for the NFL draft has to decide whether they're pulling themselves out of the NFL draft. So they basically are assumed to be moving on, but if they still have a COVID year, the extra year that they can come back, they have that option, but they have until February 4th to make that decision and make that announced too. Otherwise, if they say nothing, they're headed off to the NFL draft. So that's where we
Yep.
stand there.
Exactly. And I do think, we are in a weird position with Harbaugh as well, where some guys I actually know of that are staying but haven't announced it yet, to the public. So I think there's some weird stuff there with some guys that are just kind of not taking the big stage to actually, make it public, but they have decided that they're going to stay and things like that.
Josh Ross is a guy that's moving out of the NFL and led the team with 106 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, broke up a couple passes. So he's going to be missed. How's the linebacker position look?
Yeah, the linebacker position, I mean, Josh Ross, there were times where he did not look like he was the most athletic guy on the field. Definitely a good run stopper in the middle, but more so you're going to miss his leadership. He's definitely a guy that knew everything. If I've been told by even a Junior Colson, who I'll talk about in a second, and who was a freshman All-American, there were times where he didn't know where he was going, but Josh Ross did. That's what Josh Ross does for that team. So you're definitely going to miss him. But like I just talked about, Junior Colson, freshman All-America at the linebacker position, is going to come back and be a stud. So he's, only going to get bigger and better. And then another young guy right next to him is going to be Nakai Hill-Green, who's a sophomore this year, going to be a junior. He has gotten bigger and faster. So honestly, I could see Michigan upgrading at the linebacker position. Both those guys are not only big, but they're super quick. They're fast, where Josh Ross couldn't cover many guys if he got stuck on a good tight end, like maybe a Brock Bowers, for instance. He's pretty good,
A
though.
hypothetical matchup. I could see that being a problem for him. Sure.
Yeah. So I do think that Michigan's going to be pretty solid at the linebacker position moving forward. You've even got a guy like Kalel Mullings, who was a sophomore as well. So they definitely have some young guys that have not only already contributed, but will take that next step. I think that's the important part, that it wasn't, Michigan didn't have 2 senior linebackers that got all the play, and now they've got 2 brand new ones. They've got guys that have been in there in the rotation that are going to just take that next step to a starter this next year.
Colson had 60 tackles. Hill-Green had 50, so that's a ton of production coming back in place of Josh Ross right there. We got Justin Rowe on the line talking up Michigan football, as he always does with us. Take the deep dive on Blue by 90 podcast. Check it out, and you've got Justin's Twitter handle right there on the banner, Justin Rowe 92. All right, defensive backfield, Brad Hawkins and Dax Hill. We talk about tackle totals. They had 129 between the two of them. So the safety position is going to have to find somebody.
Yeah, that's going to be another position. I mean, it's right there with the defensive line, where you're talking about a guy in Dax Hill who was a 5-star and played like it. He was fast. He covered the entire field a lot. He not only was great in coverage, but would also come up and play the run and play the sweeps and that type of stuff too. And then Brad Hawkins, who came back for a 5th year, was a senior leader. Again, that's obviously a theme that we're going through here, is that Michigan's losing a lot of senior leadership on this defensive side of the ball. So how do you switch or replace that? It's going to be tough, but I do think that they've got some guys that contributed down the end of the season, like Rod Moore, who's a true freshman, stepped in when there were some injuries and played really well. So he was only a 3-star coming out and only a true freshman when he was playing, but he came in and made some great plays down the stretch. I definitely can see him contributing for sure. I'm also going to look at RJ Moten. So RJ Moten was a guy who got a lot of play after he solidified his spot at one of those safeties. So he played a lot in some nickel packages and things like that. And so he's going to take a next step for Michigan, I think. It's very similar to the linebacker position. and really the entire defense, where they've got guys that have gotten play, but they just haven't been, starting, and they haven't been the go-to guys yet. So it's just going to be up to these guys to take that big leap next, and make sure that they can take the next step. You even talk about a guy like Jaden McBurrows, who came in as a true freshman as well, and he's going to come in and probably be that nickel guy next year. And so they've got a lot of talent. It's just, you just never know how those guys, no matter how talented, once you get on the field and you strap it up on Saturday, how well can he perform?
Yeah. Moten had 35 tackles. Moore had 33, to your point. So they've been on the field. They've been productive, but just haven't made splash plays, haven't been counted on to be that guy. Dax Hill's been phenomenal, of course. Vincent Gray, now he had a rough start to his career and really made a name for himself in a negative way, but recovered and became a really good player.
Yeah, he did. It's really interesting to see what happened in 2020, where he was getting picked on by not good teams. You look at Michigan State's offense, and they picked on Vincent Gray, and then turned out to be one of the worst offenses in the Big Ten, after that game. And so he did turn it around. So I do have to give him props for turning it around, in just one offseason and becoming a really, really solid defender. I think that probably has to do with Mike McDonald and a new staff coming in, Ron Bellamy helping with the defensive backs. And I think that he's probably thinking, I'm going to strike while the iron is hot here and take a leap for the NFL, after a pretty solid season. So I think that's a guy that you're going to, struggle to replace, but probably still like replaceable. It's not a guy that I think that you're like, oh my God, how do we possibly replace him? But you have a lot of talent on the other side. DJ Turner played really well for Michigan in that backfield as well. He was a young guy that's coming up, and I thought he went in there and played well, down the stretch for Michigan. And I think too, the fun part for Michigan here is some guys that are coming in. You've got Will Johnson, who's a 5-star, and everybody's talking about him, right? And I think he's got a chance to start day one for Michigan. He is that talented. So you could definitely see him coming in. But Jamon Green is going to be a guy that's played. He's been in and out of the starting role. Him and DJ Turner kind of flip-flopped a little bit, and they were battling for some roles on the other side of Vincent Gray. But DJ Turner kind of took that spot over by the end of the year. So will Jamon Green get another shot at it? I'm sure he will. But Will Johnson's going to be coming in hot with a lot of talent. So it'll be interesting to see how that defensive backfield shakes out.
Moving to the offense, Hassan Haskins carried the ball 270 times. He ran for 20 touchdowns. He's not going to be replaced with one guy, but I think it's pretty easy to see your two guys that take care of that. Donovan Edwards, Blake Corum. From a talent standpoint, there's no drop off. Hassan Haskins is just kind of a different dude when it comes to, just give it to him. He's just a beast, but there's no issue there.
Yeah, I think it's another situation where you're going to miss Hassan Haskins, because when you needed 2 yards, Hassan Haskins was getting 3. And he just he broke tackles, made something out of nothing, never fumbled the ball in his entire career at Michigan, which is unbelievable, right? And he also had, I think he had, I can't remember exactly, but it was less than 5 negative plays in this season in 2021. So he just didn't make mistakes. He made something happen when there was nothing to be had. So you are going to miss him in that sense. But like you said, when you look at the talent that is coming back in this backfield, you're pretty excited. You've got Blake Corum, who turned into RB1 for a good stretch in the middle of the season before Haskins took back over when Corum got hurt. Blake Corum is a dude as well. He has breakaway speed. He makes guys miss, but still somehow falls forward. For as little of a guy as he is, he's a pretty dang physical back. So he's going to be a stud moving forward. And then this is a hot take, but I do think Donovan Edwards could be RB1 by the 4th or 5th game this year. he is that talented where he's kind of, you had the 1-2 punch with Haskins and Corum, where Haskins was obviously the physical guy and Corum was the speed guy. Donovan Edwards has both of those abilities. He's just as big as Haskins, if not bigger, and very physical, but has the same type of speed that Corum has. So I think you could definitely see him break out into possibly an RB1 role. The other part of that is he's a phenomenal ball catcher, pass catcher. He sometimes was even split out by the end of the year in that slot position for Michigan, so they can use him there as well. And I think Josh Gaddis loved to have Donovan Edwards. No matter, I think you'll see a lot of them both on the field at the same time next year.
Yeah, I think people found out about Donovan Edwards in particular as a pass receiver against Maryland. Obviously, he showed those skills before that, but he had a ridiculous game against Maryland, almost like 170 yards receiving, something like that. And I just want to underline the Hassan Haskins number. So he had 476 touches between receptions and carries in his career, 476. And that's high volume, like high traffic. That's not like catching a swing pass and running out of bounds. That's like almost every carries between the tackles with like multiple defensive linemen, knocking him around.
It's really impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something, you have Mike Hart on the staff now as the running backs coach, and he was the last guy to do that, where he ran the ball 1,000,000 times and didn't fumble. Right. And so, I think it was obvious that was an emphasis, but as much as I'm excited about these guys, and Corum and Edwards, you're going to miss a guy like Hassan Haskins because of how reliable he was day in and day out.
Justin Rose here to talk Michigan football. Joins us on a regular basis. Join his podcast, Blue by 90 podcast. And you just track Justin's work on his Twitter feed as well, Justin Rowe 92. All right, let's look at the offensive line. Couple significant losses, but still in pretty good shape. Andrew Vastardis, of course, the starting center and the leader up front.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest one, and we've touched on it before. There's that theme of senior leadership is still, I think there is a common misconception around the country that Michigan was like all seniors and they're losing everybody. I think they're losing a lot of seniors, but they still had a lot of contributing talent throughout this team that did play a lot and is coming back. But definitely Andrew Vastardis is one of those guys, a sixth-year senior who came in as a walk-on, turned into a captain and an All-American. And so it's just a really cool story. Michigan man, that whole thing, right, which is really cool to see. So you're going to miss that on the offensive line for sure. But the replacement is what is to be excited about. This was definitely a question mark for Michigan going into next year, and they hit the portal, which is, I'll be honest, Mark, this is like the first time for Michigan I've been like, wow, they did something great in the portal. They really haven't done that much. So for them to bring on, it's Olu is I think what he goes by, Olusegun Oluwatimi. So I got to work on the pronunciation a little bit here before next fall.
Hey, at least you took a shot at it. I was a coward.
You were going to hold off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he, Remington Award, which is the best center in the nation, finalist. So to replace a 60-year senior with that type of a guy is huge for Michigan. So you almost have an upgrade in talent because Vastardis was definitely undersized for his position. And hopefully, obviously, he's going to come in and gel with that offensive line. But that's a huge pickup for Michigan to really solidify that center position.
Okay. I don't know how the Remington finalist is all AC second team. I don't know that the math works for that, but anyway, that's fine. It doesn't really matter.
Well,
these all-star teams.
The ACC is just very deep,
Yes, known for their brutish offensive fronts. Yes, absolutely. But he has started 36 games, so he's got a wealth of experience as well. All right. Good stuff with Justin Rowe talking Michigan football. And again, it's Blue by 90 podcast. Justin, we appreciate you stopping by, breaking things down for us.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me.